What has been your biggest I have to get the duck out of here as soon as possible life moment? I was walking home from the gym in Seattle, and I would always walk by this weird house with blankets over the windows. There was also fenced inside yard packed with old busted RVs and garbage. This particular night, there was an old dude with a long white beard standing in front of the house in a bathrobe, smoking a cigarette. I had never seen anyone in front of the house before. Then, I heard what sounded like a Prius pulling up to a stoplight, but was in fact several Seattle police cars rolling up with their engines and lights off. I don't even know how they got that quiet. Then I saw a few officers approaching the house and the old man with their guns drawn, completely silently. One of them made eye contact with me and made a fairly violent hand motion for me to go a different direction. So I did, very quickly. About a month later that house was torn down. I have no idea what happened that night, and I'm glad I didn't have to find out. For a brief stint in my life I was homeless. While scouring for food in a dumpster I opened it to find two homeless dudes banging in there. Felt like I was in an episode of It's Always Sunny. I was 9 or so, about to go wading in a creek, when I noticed a snake in the water. Just a little snake, maybe a foot long, just hanging out mostly vertical with its tail in some mud and reeds and stuff and its nostrils sticking out of the water. Okay, no big deal. I just won't wade right there. I moved downstream 5 feet or so, and guess what? 2 little snakes right where I wanted to put my bare feet, and another one in the reeds, and most of those weren't reeds. TLDR, I almost walked all over water moccasin daycare. When I was in Iraq 2 years ago visiting family and ISIS took over my city. Nope, the duck back to America on the next flight. Chechnya in I think 1995. There were obviously a lot of those moments, but one that stood out was when I was walking back to the apartment block I was staying at and I realized the entire block was not only empty, but all of the cars were moved out of the way and there was a carpet laid out about 20 feet in front of me. I have no idea what was under the carpet or why it was there, but it just felt so suspicious, and of course my first instinct is to run away. The second I turn around, someone from far away opens fire at me, presumably a sniper but could have been closer. I then heard shouting and screaming for men to run and get me. The shouts were far away. They knew they weren't gonna be able to capture me. The ducking carpet man. I won't ever forget that carpet. My biggest guess was they built a hole under the carpet for people like me to fall into. Then they would capture and rape, torture you or whatever they would want. Lots of ducked up marauders and bandits in Grozny during the war. I was walking home from work one night when a man put his hand on my shoulder. I turned around and he told me he was going to put me on top of a spiked iron fence naked. I said no thanks very loudly and sped walked away. I didn't expect it to work but he didn't follow me. Edit, not Canadian. But thanks for calling me polite. Also, thanks for the gold, stranger. High school party, out in a field behind the host's house. All was going well until some guy brought fireworks. Super dry season. Did not wait around to see what would happen. Heard the next day almost 2 acres went up in flames, and the open fire crew paid him and his folks a visit. I went to a summer camp. I have ADHD. Turns out my mom was confused with what special needs means and thought it included ADHD. So me and the Tourette's kid got along pretty great, as we were the only two on the same level. Still the longest 2 weeks of my life. Went to my friend's church, ignorant to what Pentecostal is. Itch beside me started to speak in tongues. I'd like to think of myself as a mature person with self-control. Nope. There was no cutting off my laughter. I dipped the duck out mid-sermon. Every once in a while, your gut tells you something is up. I'm at a party and get that tingling in my gut telling me I'm not okay here. I finally just decide to leave with a few friends to chill at my place. A few hours later, I get a phone call from another friend asking if I was okay. Apparently the house belonged to a guy who was affiliated with gangs. Some thugs tried to crash the party and when they got kicked out, they started fighting people. A big fight breaks out and a few people ended up in the hospital. Eventually the house owner brought out a gun and shot a few rounds in the air and that's when everyone scattered away from the area. The cops were called and people were arrested. Meanwhile, I left hours ago and was currently playing drunk video games with a couple friends. Sometimes your gut's right. Was in Japan for a solo vacation a few weeks ago. I got lost in Shibuya at like 3 AM in the morning and needed to find a train station. Some creepy Nigerian dude pops up and offers to direct me to the station. Sure, I say, like the utter dumbersitch I am. The guy takes me in the complete opposite direction. We end up at a hotel. He starts spouting bullet about falling in love with me and wanting to spend the night with me. Nope, the duck out of there and took a taxi instead. I was digging a trench in my side yard during a massive flood to get the water moving again. I heard a loud series of cracking noises behind me and turned around to see branches falling off of a large oak tree. When the cracking got louder, I sprinted out toward the street. Twigs whipped my ears and back before I was safely away. So, probably that. Hanging out with a friend and their friend and boyfriend in college. Bouncing around between parties. Turns out her friend's boyfriend was extremely Russian and we end up at this party where there are more people not speaking English than speaking it. Had a pretty good time. The boyfriend comes back inside from the backyard. He suggests we leave immediately because there's going to be a fight and it's going to be bad. I look in the backyard and there are two guys screaming at each other in Russian and the house is slowly emptying as people are running out back to take sides. Being in a Russian street fight is not on my bucket list. The three of us noped out real quick. I live on a cattle farm, and one time we, my dad, granddad, and I, had to move a bull into another pen so that we could give him medicine for his injured leg. To do this, we spread out in a fan, with what are basically big rattles on sticks to make noise and get him to go the other way. When we get to the open gate, the bull looks at it, looks some more, and decides there must be a better way to go. He turns, faces us. We make noise to get him to turn around, and the cycle repeats. Finally he starts freaking out. He turns, faces directly at me, and jumps. I found mine a track star and climbed the fence to get away. Needless to say, we left him alone after that. On my last flight home, I sat down next to a nice looking woman. As soon as we were up in the air, she taps on my shoulder, motions for me to take my headphones off, and proceeds to ask me if I have time to hear about the word of God. I spent a damn ass 7 hours flight trapped next to a Jehovah's Witness learning about which Bible verses would solve my problems because I was too scared to decline and risk smiting God while I was 40,000 feet up. I was walking to a cafe when a group of oddly dressed people, one was wearing a cloak and literal pauldrons and one had some sort of mask, very creepily invited me into their car. I did not accept. I was living in Guatemala and started to hang out with the wrong crowd. One day I was introduced to a drug lord and the conversation about me being a US citizen came up. The dude started to insist I smuggle drugs for him. I left the place and somehow the dude found me at another house and when I said no again, he sucker punched me. I told him I would think about it and drove there and stopped hanging around my friends. At a house party in university and some dude was trying to buff a dent out of a ping pong ball. He held a lighter under the ball and it caught fire, at which point the dude dropped the ball onto the floor, carpeted. It caught fire and everyone started freaking out. It ended up burning the living room pretty bad. When I was in high school I delivered pizzas for a very small shop in a dead-end town. MapQuest couldn't pull up 90% of the addresses. Order comes in. I take it. Guy gives me directions. Follow said directions and go a mile down this dirt road into the ducking woods. Instantly freaked out. Pull up to what looks like a burned down trailer. Guy is standing on his porch with a giant bird on his shoulder. Give him pizza. He starts flipping dollar bills in his hand counting while staring into my ducking soul. Do you wanna pet my bird? No thank you. Racist. He didn't tip me. D. When I was little me and my dad went out to check a fire not too far away. He used to be with the police and approached an officer, old colleague, on the scene if he was right that it's a local fireworks storage that was on fire. He was right. That was the moment he decided we should TFO. Less than 100-200 meters later the whole thing went kaboom. Which is when I myself was like duck this it. I dropped my bike and just ran away. I remember seeing the shockwave knocking out the windows of all the buildings street by street, which was cool until the wave hit me myself. This is a video of the explosion. 23 ppl killed. For more info search fireworks disaster end sheet. Someone pulled out an acoustic guitar at a party. Today, when I found out my wife hasn't just been having an affair but has also been ducking people for money. When I was 15 or 16 I got my hands on an edible brownie. My dealer told me it was really strong and to eat half of it. I thought I would have it before Thanksgiving dinner. I ate it, but didn't feel anything after about 10 minutes. So I ate the rest. I didn't know that edibles didn't hit you right away, and by the time it did hit me, it hit me really hard. I was so high during dinner. I was making things very uncomfortable for my parents and my godparents. I refused to look up from my plate and was dodging questions. After about 15 minutes or so, I had to get out of there, so I just picked up my plate and went downstairs to my room. My mom came after me and asked what the hell was wrong with me, and I explained I was really high and needed to be alone. Was doing some urban exploring with some friends at the old Packard plant in Detroit. We were hanging out for a while on the top floor, playing guitars, etc. when I heard a loud glass smashing sound from afar. I walked over and looked down to this courtyard, and there were a few guys smashing up a very nice Chrysler 300 with baseball bats. They did not see me or hear us, but I imagine if they did things would have gone a lot differently. I ran back over to my friends and said, "Shut the duck up. Don't make a sound. We have to go." And we noped the duck out of there. Edit. This is the place. Edit 2. Here's some pictures I took with my 2008 potato camera, since people actually were reading this. My poor car died, and I called AAA to tow it to the nearest approved repair shop. Well, the tow truck they sent me decided to take me to the shop, but something seemed really off. First off, instead of having chairs, they just had old car seats you could sit in. Also, they had all of these photos of naked women all over the walls. Usually they do that, but not so openly, right? Also, there was this weird bum in there watching Maury Povich and yelling at the TV that all the pregnant women who don't know their fathers are sluts. Well, I got a call from the repair company and they wanted to know where I was. I told them at the shop. Turns out it was a pirate tow truck driver, and we had to come in and open a can of whoopers on these chumps to get my car to the real repair shop. Was hanging out with an ex-friend and her friend. Guy was nodding off in my backseat of my car, and we kept stopping at people's houses cause he said they owed him money. Got out there as fast as I can. I was sitting outside dance class with a friend. We were both about 12 or 13. And two random bigger dudes walk by. We think nothing of it. It's a public street. People walk. One dude turns and approaches us. Introduces himself. Demands to shake hands. I'm already a little creeped out, but notice, thank God, the door that usually locked automatically behind us was propped open. I shake hands with the dude to keep him from escalating. He starts sobbing and says, "I'm so sorry. I was supposed to let you go. I'm so sorry." But I screamed at my friend to run. Yanked my hand out of his, which was impressive. He had a good grip on me. We bolted and shut the door behind us. They stalked the building until police showed up. Never knew what they were planning, and I don't want to. On acid. Around midnight. Talking to cops because I was the only one in my group of around 7 very wasted folks who wasn't a ducking muppet. As we passed them on their way to bust the house we left less than 5 minutes before. Evening. Folks. Evening, officer. Having a good night? Yes sir. My friends and I have been at my place up the road. We're heading to a party. You didn't come from that house up there? Nope. Sounds like a bit of a rager though. My house is just up on so and so street round the corner. True. Okay. Well, you stay safe tonight. Yes sir. Thank you, officer. I walked round the next corner to sit on the ground and freak out a little. But it was kind of a rush and the rest of my trip was great. I was 16 or 17. My friend said we were going to really quickly drop in at a party then go back to her house to hang out. I figured she meant we'd stay for an hour or so. So I agreed. We got there and immediately it was red flags and danger signs in my mind. I tried to get her to leave, but some guy she liked turned out to be there. So she pretty much ditched me for him. I knew no one there. but I'm a social girl, so I chit-chatted a bit, but I kept feeling off about the place. This guy came up to me and was flirting hardcore, like out of nowhere. He kept trying to convince me to drink. I kept saying no thanks. He was very aggressive about it and making me super uncomfortable. I couldn't find my friend, so I found the quietest corner I could, while still being surrounded by people, just to be safe, and called my parents. They came and got me. No questions asked. That was the straw that broke the camel's back though. Never really was friends with that girl again. Edit. Thanks for all the replies. I want to clarify, my name is not Barbara. Haha. I was partying hard one night in university and I blacked out. I was gone. I woke naked up in a room I didn't recognize, staring at a shrine to Bon Jovi. Pictures, drawings, autographs, song lyrics. It covered the wall. In the center was a giant pencil-drawn portrait of his face. I was staring at the portrait when a girl's voice whispered in my ear, I drew the one in the center.